Hi guys, this is Merc and today we are looking at top 10 unsolved mysteries. Number 1. In 1947, a chilling SOS message was picked up. All officers, include captain, are dead, lying in the chart room and bridge, possibly whole crew dead. This was followed by some indecipherable Morse code and one final grisly message, I die. Then silence. It was picked up by nearby ships and listening posts, who identified the vessel as the Dutch freighter SS Ourang Medan and located it within the Strait of Malacca that separates Indonesia from Malaysia. The nearest merchant ship, the Silver Star, raced to her aid. The Silver Star was soon alongside the Dutch ship, and their boarding party found a horrifying sight. Every member of the crew lay dead, their corpses scattered on the decks. More than this, their eyes were still open, and expressions of sheer terror were etched on their features. The Silver Star's party found the radio operator dead too, his hand still on the Morse sending code, eyes wide open and teeth barred. There were no signs of wounds or injuries on any of the bodies. The decision was made to tow the mysterious ship back to the port, but before they could get underway, smoke began emanating from the decks below. The boarding party hurriedly returned to their ships and barely had the time to cut the tow lines before the SS Ourang Medan exploded and swiftly sank. It has been claimed that the clouds of noxious natural gases could have bubbled from the fissures in the seabed and engulfed the ship. Even aliens and ghosts have been cited as the possible explanations for Ourang Medan's horrifying and mysterious demise. To this date, the exact fate of her crew remains an impenetrable mystery. Number 2. It's March 31, 1922, on a small farm located between the towns of Ingolstadt and Schrobenhausen in Bavaria, Germany. 6 inhabitants of the farm, including a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old, didn't know that night would be their last. It started with a string of inexplicable occurrences. Footprints in the snow coming from the woods to the back door, but nothing leading back. Creaking in the attic, an unfamiliar newspaper in the kitchen. Then the house keys went missing, and someone tried to break the lock on the tool shed. The house was checked, but nothing was found. Andres Gruber, the father, couldn't decide what to make of it. He confided these strange incidents to the neighbors and friends, but they were still shunned when on a chilling night in 1922, Andres and his family, wife Kazilia, daughter Victoria, grandchildren Kazilia and Joseph, and housemaid Maria, were slaughtered with a pickaxe in their home. Police deduced that Andreas, Kazilia, Victoria, and young Kazilia were somehow lured to the livestock barn and slaughtered one by one. Afterward, the killer entered the house and bludgeoned little Joseph while he slept in his parents' bedroom. Then he headed to Maria's room and murdered her too. The bodies were discovered the following Tuesday after young Kazilia failed to show up for school. While police suspected robbery, they soon abandoned the theory after finding money in the house. Numerous interrogations turned up nothing. Meanwhile, autopsies revealed young Kazilia survived her initial attack. While lying next to her dead family in the barn, she had torn out tufts of hair before finally succumbing to her wounds. As if that wasn't creepy enough, imagine the killer stuck around. Food had clearly been eaten from the kitchen. Someone continued to feed the cattle. Neighbors also reported smoke rising from the chimney, and even the dog had been let out. Whoever slaughtered the residents stayed through the weekend and took care of the place before moving on. No one was charged of the murder, and to this day, it remains an unsolved mystery. Number 3. Bouvet Island is one of the most isolated places on Earth. It lies deep in the South Atlantic. Antarctica is the nearest landmass, which is also situated more than 1,700 kilometers to the south. There have been no inhabitation on the island, and due to the unsustainability of plant life, there are no future possibilities. However, when a British expedition from South Africa arrived in 1964, they discovered an abandoned lifeboat. There were also certain other items near the boat, like oars, wood, drum, and copper tank. The boat was in good condition, but no traces of its passengers were found. The boat carried no identifiable marks, neither any shipping company nor any nation. 2 years later, another expedition was sent to the island, but the boat had vanished. Its nearby objects also disappeared. Till date, no one knows about the boat and its passengers. Number 4. On the 26th December 1900, a small ship was making its way to the Flannan Islands, a remote island which was completely uninhabited, and the only people on the island were 3 lighthouse keepers. Captain James Harvey was in charge of the ship, which was also carrying Joseph Moore, a replacement lighthouse keeper. As the ship reached the landing platform, Captain Harvey was surprised not to see anyone waiting for their arrival. He blew his horn and sent up a warning flare to attract attention. There was no response. Joseph Moore then rowed ashore and ascended up the steep set of stairs that led up to the lighthouse. Once at the lighthouse, Moore noticed something was immediately wrong. The door to the lighthouse was unlocked, and in the entrance hall, 2 of the 3 oilskin coats were missing. Moore continued on to kitchen area, where he found half-eaten food and an overturned chair, almost as if someone had jumped from their seat in a hurry. To add to this peculiar scene, the kitchen clock had also stopped. Moore continued to search for the rest of the lighthouse, but found no signs of the lighthouse keepers. He ran back to the ship to inform Captain Harvey, who subsequently ordered a search of the island for the missing men. No one was found. As investigation took place, they found very strange entries in the lighthouse log. On the 12th December, Thomas Marshall, the second assistant, rode off several winds the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years. He also noticed that James Duckett, the principal keeper, had been very quiet, and that third assistant, William MacArthur, had been crying. What is strange about the final remark was that William MacArthur was a seasoned mariner and was known on the Scottish mainland as a real tough guy. Why would he be crying about a mere storm? Log entries on the 13th December stated that the storm was still raging and that all 3 men had been praying. But the question arises, why were the 3 experienced lighthouse keepers, safely situated on a brand new lighthouse that was 150 feet above the sea level, be praying for a storm to stop? They should be perfectly safe in the lighthouse. The final log entry was made on the 15th December. It simply read, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." No one knows what was meant by God is over all. And why in a bitter cold winter had one of the lighthouse keepers ventured out without his coat? Furthermore, why had all the 3 lighthouse staff left their posts at the same time when rules and regulations strictly prohibited it? And what adds to the mystery was that there were no reported storms in the area. In fact, the weather was calm. Over the following decades, subsequent lighthouse keepers at Elleonmore have reported strange voices in the wind, calling out the names of the 3 dead men. Theories about their disappearance have ranged from foreign invaders capturing the men all the way to alien abductions. Whatever reason for their disappearance, something or someone snatched those 3 men from the rock of Elleonmore. Number 5. Francis Levy was a dedicated firefighter during 1920s. He loved his job and his peers loved him. He was a pleasant man, always ready with a smile and a helping hand. On April 18, 1924, Francis' colleagues became aware of a change in his demeanor. Suddenly he was an unsmiling, grunting guy, washing a large window at the Chicago Fire Department, not looking at anyone or even talking. After a few minutes, Levy suddenly announced that he had a very strange feeling, a feeling that he might die that very day. At that very moment, the phone rang and broke the heavy atmosphere brought up by the fireman's word. A fire was raging at a building quite a long way from the fire department, and no time was to be wasted. In just a few minutes, Francis Levy and his fellow firefighters were on the scene, assessing the situation and helping those trapped on the top floors. Everything seemed to be on track to rescue everyone from the building. Then suddenly, the flames engulfed the lower part of the building and the roof caved in. As soon as this happened, the walls came crashing down, pinning many people under the rubble, including Levy. Levy's grim premonition came true. He lost his life that day, trying to save others. The very next day, trying to come to terms with the loss of Levy, his colleagues sat at the firehouse thinking about the events of the previous day. Suddenly, they noticed something strange on one of the windows. It looked like a handprint smudged onto the glass. Eerily, it was the very same window that Francis Levy was busy washing the day before. The firemen cleaned the window again, but the print stubbornly refused to disappear. For many years, the handprint remained on the window in spite of chemicals used to try and remove it. The strange mystery remained unsolved, but came to an abrupt end when a newspaper boy threw a paper against the window in 1944, causing it to shatter into pieces. Number 6. India, which has very low rate of twinning in the world, has one small village known as Kodini, which far surpasses the world average of twins born in a year. Located in Kerala, this small village is situated 15 miles off Malappuram and boasts a population of only 2,000 people. This small village in India is freaking out scientists all over the world. In this population of 2,000 lives a stunning number of 220 pairs of twins, which equates to 440 individuals. Scientists are trying to figure out the reason for this high twinning rate in this village, but so far they have not really succeeded. The oldest twin pair that lives in the village today were born in 1949. This village has what is known as the Twins and Kins Association. It is actually an association of twins and is the first of its kind in the entire world. What's really spooky about the whole thing is that the women of the village who have been married off to the faraway lands have actually given birth to twins. Also, the reverse is true. Men who have come and started living in Kodini from other villages and married a girl from Kodini have blessed with the twins. In this twin town, of every 1,000 births, 45 are twins. This is extremely high rate compared to entire India's average of 4 out of every 1,000 births. A local doctor named Krishnan Shribiju has studied the twinning phenomena of the village for quite some time and found out that twinning rate in Kodini is actually increasing. In the last 5 years alone, up to 60 pairs of twins have been born, with the rate of twins increasing year on year. Scientists have considered almost every factor that could possibly lead to high rate of twinnings, but failed to get any answer that properly explains the phenomena in the twin town. Number 7. A series of tragic events haunt the otherwise picturesque Overtoun Bridge, near Dumbarton, Scotland, leading many to rename it the Bridge of Death. In the past 50 years, as many as 50 dogs have leaped to their deaths from the bridge, while people have also jumped and survived to the nearly 50-foot plunge to the rocks below. The animals all leap from the same spot, between the final 2 parapets on the right-hand side of the historic bridge. Almost all have happened in a clear and sunny days, which is relatively rare for a western side of Scotland. All of the dogs that have jumped have been long-nosed dogs, such as collies, labradors, and other retrievers. What is more strange is that of the animals that survived their leap, some have returned and attempted to jump again. According to the dog behavior consultants, the canines can't have suicidal thoughts, hence there must be something below the bridge, a sensory stimulation of some sort, that compels them to take the leap. No one exactly knows why do these dogs jump to their ultimate death. Number 8. On November 24, 1971, a man in his mid-40s and giving the name Dan Cooper, also known as D.B. Cooper, hijacked a Boeing 727 aircraft and demanded 2 parachutes and $200,000 in ransom. His claim of having a bomb in his briefcase was verified by an air stewardess. Cooper was given the ransom money at the Seattle-Tacoma airport. He allowed passengers and some members of the flight crew to leave before ordering the plane to be flown to Mexico. Soon after the plane took off, Cooper then opened the rear air stairs and parachuted in the pitch-black rain-lashed night. A 5-month manhunt, said to be the most extensive and expensive of its kind, was immediately launched. Despite $5,880 of ransom being discovered by a boy in 1980, no other trace of hijacker was ever found. Despite there being hundreds of leads since 1971, Cooper's identity remains a mystery and the world's only unsolved skyjacking case. Number 9. The story of Sodder children's disappearance is as fascinating and mysterious as it is heartbreaking. Around 1 a.m. on Christmas Day in 1945, a fire broke out in the Sodder family's West Virginia home. Both parents and 4 of their 9 children escaped, but 5 children were unaccounted for. When the father, George, attempted to re-enter the house to save the children, the ladder that was always leaning against the house was missing. He then thought to drive one of his 2 coal trucks to the house and climb it to enter through the window, but neither of the trucks started, even though they both were functioning the day before. Multiple people phoned the operator for help, but the call was never answered, and while the fire station was only 2 miles away, the fire trucks didn't arrive until 8 a.m. On searching, no human remains were found in the remnants of the fire. Fast forward 20 years. The family received a photograph of a young man in the mail who resembled one of their missing sons. On the back of the photo, there was a handwritten message that read, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie. Little boys, A90132 or 35. While convinced that it was Louis, they were unable to decode the obscure message or trace who actually sent the picture. The Sodders later hired private investigators to help find their missing children, but at least 2 of them immediately went missing. Some theories suggest that the local mafia tried to recruit George Sodder, but he refused. Still, the case remains unsolved. Number 10. The Marlborough was an iron-built 2-decked merchant sailing ship, which disappeared in 1890. Marlborough had made 14 successful voyages with immigrants from London to New Zealand up to 1890, most often returning with cargoes of wool and frozen meat. The last recorded trip saw it sail from New Zealand in January 1890, with 33 crew members and a small number of passengers on board. By April of that year, it had not arrived in Britain and was reported missing, assumed lost at sea. The insurance claim stated the ship had likely been sunk by icebergs, which were frequently encountered near Cape Horn. In October 1913, the Singapore newspaper The Straits Times published a story according to which the Marlborough had been discovered near Cape Horn, with the skeletons of her crew on board. This means the ship was eventually found 23 years after it disappeared. According to the reports, in 1913, a shipwreck was discovered by another crew in Punta Arenas, Chile. They boarded the ship and discovered it to be Marlborough, which had run aground onto an extremely craggy island. 2 crew members that boarded the ship reported they were horrified at what they found. All in all, about 20 skeletons were found on board, and in a lot of different locations. One was found alone directly under the wheel, and another was found alone on the bridge, with 5 more nearby. No less than 3 skeletons were found by the ladder leading below the deck. The largest group found in a single area consisted of 10 skeletons, in what is known to be the mess room. There was no evidence of foul play. which makes the placement of skeletons extremely baffling. They obviously died at the same time because you wouldn't leave the dead bodies just lying around the ship. So how did 3 people die in hatchway at once? It might suggest to some that they were running from something, but remember, the bodies were found in different locations all over the ship, which says they weren't rounded up by anyone and killed. Another fact to remember is that a person, most likely the captain, was found under the steering wheel. Steering really wouldn't be the high priority if your crew was being killed. And apart from the fact that no damage to the bodies was reported, the captain had his sword right by him. Why wasn't this used and later looted? And why wasn't anything looted? And if the ship had simply run aground, everyone should have gotten off. To this day, no one knows why or how the crew members died, and it remains an unsolved mystery. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, there are a couple of ways to let me know. You can give this video a like and comment down below, as it will help me with my future content. Also, you can subscribe and follow me on Twitter and Facebook if you want to see more of these types of videos. Have a good day or night. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.